So I just completed my study at Alaska Pacific University, and it was originally started as a AmeriCorps project. And for those of you who don't know, AmeriCorps is a volunteer service program. And I was based in Cooper Landing, Alaska. So my study, I utilized the norm activation theory, which was developed by Norm Schwartz in 1968. This is the location of my study. It's located on the Kenai Lake, which is in Cooper Landing, Alaska. Very pristine. This arrow is pointing to the Kenai Peninsula on the state of Alaska. A little closer, here's where it is specifically located. It's accessible by road. It's 2 hours from Anchorage, which is the main town in the upper region of Alaska. A aerial viewpoint from the mountains facing east, and that arrow is pointing specifically where the beach is. This yellow road, stolen from Google Earth or Google Maps, shows how easily you can get to the site. So that little red dot is where it is. And the site consists of 5 acres. This map shows more specifically the 5 acres, and the little brown lines are the social trails, or the user-created trails across the 5 acres. As you can see, it's kind of a weird spiderweb-looking shape. So I took those user-created trails and followed them. My study took place in 2 parts. One was I was seeing what people were actually doing there. So since there was user-created trails, I stuck with those instead of creating my own, and counted how many piles of waste I saw every 2 weeks. And midway through the study period, I installed 3 of those educational posters that are going around to see if that made any difference in how people treated this landscape. So why was I doing this? It started as a community survey through Cooper Landing, and the residents were concerned about the waste accumulating on the riverbanks. So this is not only on the lake, it's all the way along the river, which people from around the world come to fish this river. It's very popular. This is part of my monitoring. This is what it looks like if you step into the woods. So I counted each pile of toilet paper. I didn't lift it up to see if there was actually a turd under it. I just assumed that toilet paper meant waste. There was a toilet discovered in the middle of this area, so it showed that someone cared enough to build a toilet. However, they didn't put anything underneath the toilet. So you can see underneath the frame, it's just going straight on the forest floor. And midway through the summer, apparently it reached a poo saturation point, and so folks moved it 6 feet over. Again, no hole or anything. So pile counts, so this would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 counts. Again, they're everywhere. And there's a creek on one side, which for some reason people like to go right next to the creek. They not only are crapping on the forest floor, they are just taking out trees to create their own campsites and building fire pits. So you can see in the back on the birch trees, I'm not sure how to use the clicker, but I mean the red dot, they're stripping the bark on the birch trees. I don't know if they're building baskets with it or they're trying to create more firewood for next year. This is up close to the bark being stripped, so that tree will eventually die. They're graffitiing trees, leaving profanity. Some of the other ones had some more descriptive words. And then building fire rings. They can't just use one fire ring. They have to build their own. And again, this is across 5 acres. So over the course of the summer, there was 17 new fire rings. On June 29th, this is a map depicting the amount of piles, all the yellow. And the green flowers are where the fire rings were. And the poo was accumulating close to where those fire rings. So they weren't going too far away from where they were camping. On July 17th, all the red dots are the new piles. You can see where they are spreading out. So now they're not only going where they were close to the camp, they're taking over. To establish the control period versus the testing period, I did a big cleanup on July 17th. They had 17 volunteers come and clean up 500 piles of feces, and we had a little fun with it. Sadly, we couldn't use the force, but here's two of them picking up some underwear, it looks like. And then we installed 3 boosters, one by the roadside, one down by the most popular camping spot, and one over around the corner. This was the only one to be vandalized, surprisingly. Some folks twisted it until the pole broke in half. They didn't do anything to actual sign. They chucked that in the woods, so I was able to replace it pretty quickly. That's where they twisted it. And then August, this was, again, a clean slate, so the waste was starting to accumulate. It should be noted that during this time, salmon fishing is slowly dying down, so people are coming less because there's less fishing opportunity. And then by September, the waste was again accumulating right near the popular campsites. In grand total, this is a map of everything. There were 695 piles of feces, which is a lot. The other section I did was surveys, so I surveyed 106 people. I actually saw 191 people, but for some reason when people saw me coming, they would scurry into the trees and avoid me. I was asked if I was a state trooper several times, which I'm not. This is the type of user group. From the surveys, we could tell that they were consumers. They had pro-environmental attitudes, but they weren't preservationists. So they cared about what happened to the landscape, but they didn't want any rules put on them. They enjoyed their free access. So the norm activation theory states that in order for there to be a behavior change, people have to be aware of the consequences and ascribe responsibility to those consequences. And together they create a norm which creates a behavior. So one of the questions on the survey was, do you wash your hands after going to the bathroom? Almost 100% said yes. So that means they are taking responsibility for washing their hands, and then they're aware of the consequences that not washing their hands is going to make them sick. However, that didn't translate into pooping in the woods. For the ascription of responsibility, 2 of the questions asked if they felt a personal obligation to the Kenai Lake and if they were aware of the human waste impacts. And so for statistics, I combined these to create the number figures. And for the awareness of consequences, similar, I took 2 questions. And together, I found that people wanted to do the right thing, but they didn't know what the right thing was. So here's one chart depicting what I discovered. You can see that here's the I always wash my hands. There was like 1 person on the no side. Everyone claimed they saw human waste. Interestingly enough, they said they are willing to pack it out and that they take care of their waste. On the back side of the survey, I asked how they take care of their waste. 78% said that they did, but on the back they put, we didn't do this at this beach. So that told me that they wanted to do it, but they didn't. And then they also didn't like to see litter, so broken glass was a big no-no. They didn't like visible waste. But on the ways to take care of the waste, they were 50-50. So that was how they were unsure about what they should do. This is how it looked in the fall, so it's a very pristine area, but education alone wasn't the solution. They need something to give them that guilty feeling so that they take responsibility. So whether that's coming from each other or from an agency-wise. But right now, if it was to come from each other, nobody knows the right answer to enforce each other. And so it's kind of a learning curve for everyone. And in the sake of time, I tried to wrap that up really quick.